This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. The 9 golden dragons wreaked havoc in the lake, causing a huge tremor. All of a sudden, they all exploded, and a shocking force shot up into the sky. The water in the entire lake flowed backward into the sky. The 5 of them were completely defenseless in this astonishing reverse flow and were swept up into the sky. A desolate figure walked out of the dungeon. He traveled 1,000 miles with one step and was about to disappear into the distance. Yunxiao hurriedly activated the power of the lunar pupil, trying to see the figure's face clearly, but a familiar face flashed in front of his eyes, and he could no longer catch any trace of it. Pa. With the disappearance of that person, the force of the lake's water flow gradually weakened. The other 4 people instantly broke free and turned into rays of light to escape to the ground. Their whereabouts had been exposed. If they didn't escape now, they would be dead. The lake water turned into a dragon's roar that soared into the sky, straight into the 9 heavens. The entire sky was covered with dark clouds, and it was actually about to rain. More than a dozen beams of light arrived in an instant, surrounding Yunxiao. Who is it? The Imperial Guards were shocked by the strange phenomenon in front of them. When they realized that his cultivation was only at the martial honor level, they suddenly became arrogant and shouted coldly, "What's going on?" Yunxiao was dumbfounded at the moment, and it took him a long time to recover from the shock. His face was pale as if he had lost his soul, and there was only one voice in his heart. "Big brother Morong, you didn't die. How did you not die? What happened? If you're still alive, then back then, Xuanji." His heart was in a mess, completely in a mess. The 9 dragons formed by the sword, the magical power formed by the thousands of bodies, and the desolate figure could not be mistaken under his moon eyes. He only felt that his breathing was a little pale, and his blood had also frozen at this moment. "I'm asking you a question. Answer me quickly, or you'll have to bear the consequences." The Imperial Army man seemed to be impatient. With a cold look on his face, he released a mighty pressure from his body and rushed over, trying to intimidate Yunxiao. Suddenly, a ray of light fell and dispelled the power, revealing a figure frowning. The hearts of the Imperial Army soldiers trembled, and they hurriedly stepped forward and bowed. Military Governor. Ning Hengfeng looked at the lake water that was almost empty, and his face turned pale. He said, "Li Yunxiao, what happened?" Yunxiao was stunned for a while as he kept patting his head with his hands, and kept saying in his heart, "I'm not going to let you go." Calm down, calm down. You don't look too good, Ning Hengfeng said. But this is the dungeon. Why are you here? What happened? Tell me immediately. There was a cold urgency in his voice, and anger gradually rose to the tip of his eyebrows. Yunxiao composed himself and said, "The monster race and the 8 guardians of the death god have come to break into the prison. Now, Lady Ruobing is in the hands of the monster race. Their goal is to escape from the Red Moon City." Preposterous. Shut up. Ning Hengfeng shouted angrily, "Martial law is imposed on the city immediately. No one is allowed to leave the city." Yes. The dozen or so subordinates responded with deep voices, immediately turning into 10 or so rays of light and disappearing into the air. After everyone had gone far away, Ning Hengfeng then said, "Li Yunxiao, why did you go to the dungeon?" Yunxiao was slightly taken aback. It was really difficult to explain, so he could only say, "It's a long story. I've also sensed that Lady Ruobing might be with these demons. I've also noticed signs of the demons breaking out of the prison, so I followed them here." Oh. Such a noble and righteous person is rare in the world. Ning Hengfeng said coldly. His eyes showed that he did not believe her at all. Yunxiao knew that this explanation was hard to convince, but the truth was almost the same. He just did not want the matter of the supreme-grade mystic artifact to be exposed. At the moment, his emotions were in a mess, and he was not in the mood to argue with Ning Hengfeng. After all, I'm also a friend of Lady Ruobing. Military governor, if you have time to argue with me, why don't you go and save the second miss? Ning Hongfeng's eyes flashed and he said coldly, Li Yunxiao, I'm warning you, don't think you can do whatever you want with my second sister's support. If you touch the interests of the Red Moon City, even second sister can't protect you. Oh, I'm so scared. Yunxiao sneered as he took out a jade pendant and waved it in his hand. This is the jade pendant your second sister gave me. Should I not break it and let your second sister explain it to you? You coward. Take care of yourself. Ning Hangfeng said angrily. He flicked his sleeve and turned to leave. Yunxiao's mood was also in a mess, or he would not have spoken so fiercely. He stared at the jade pendant in his hand for a while, then finally put it away and flew toward the Wind and Moon Garden, which was thousands of miles high in the sky. The garden was still filled with the fragrance of flowers, and Ning Qiue was meditating with her eyes closed. Yunxiao gently came to her side and gazed at the person who used to be his sister but was now going to be his aunt. Ning Qiue didn't know what he was thinking. She slowly opened her eyes and said, Didn't you leave? Is there anything else? Yunxiao sighed and told her everything, including reading Tang Jie's memory and the battle in the dungeon. But later, Murongzhu appeared and went into hiding, saying that it was a few people who had joined forces to create the scene of the water dragon rising into the sky. That crazy girl, Ning Qiue said calmly. If it weren't for the competition, I would have let her go. Let's see how she loses. That Sheng is extraordinary, Yunxiao said with a wry smile. I can't defeat him even if I join forces with 3 of the 8 symbols. But, Lady you'd better do it yourself. It's fine, Ning Qiue said. As long as the city was sealed off and the defender array was opened, no one would be able to leave quietly. If I have to do something as trivial as finding someone, then what's the use of keeping these people in Red Moon City? It's better to disband them early. I'm afraid we don't have much time, Yunxiao said. But I have a plan to capture these people. Oh? Ning Qiue was interested. She smiled. The Red Moon City is so big. If these people hide in the city, even we can't take them down. If a city is on fire from all sides, there is no way for people to escape, Yunxiao said. But if the fire at the east gate is put out at this time, what will happen to the people inside? Ning Qiue immediately understood and said, You mean we should create an opening to lure them out? Yunxiao nodded and said, Yes. Red Moon City's great array is that fire, which can create signs of masters forcing a crack to break in, making a hole in the defense, and at the same time strengthen the search in the city. This way, the 8 divisions and Ho will definitely not be able to hold back. Ning Qiue laughed. It's a good plan. You're as cunning as your father. Yunxiao looked hesitant, as if he could not decide what to say. There's no need for too many grudges between us, Ning Qiue said. We can be direct. Yunxiao pondered for a moment, then finally mustered up his courage and said, I want to ask, did Murongzhu really die that year? Silence, absolute silence. Ning Qiue's face turned pale in an instant. Her emotions fluctuated, making her breath extremely unstable. Why do you ask? She asked after a long time. I'm just asking, Yunxiao sighed. If it's inconvenient for you to answer, just forget it. Ning Qiue closed her eyes and said, Of course he's really dead. Your father was there at the time. Who could play dead under his moon pupil technique? Crystal beads began to appear on her long eyelashes, reflecting the blood-colored moonlight in the sky like blood tears. Yunxiao's heart skipped a beat. It seemed that Ning Qiue really did not know what had happened to Murongzhu in the dungeon. Otherwise, she would not have been so calm when they talked about the battle in the dungeon. Moreover, Murongzhu had indeed died that year. He had personally verified this, so it was definitely true. It seemed that there was more to what he had just seen. I'm sorry, he apologized. Ning Qiue smiled and tried to control the sadness in her heart. I'm fine. I've already walked out of the past, and I won't go back. Let's go, set a fire and catch some fish, she said with a smile. Just as the 2 of them were about to leave, a tremor suddenly came from the sky. The city's protective formation was impacted, and a halo spread out in the sky, forming a 9-colored light, which was very dazzling. Ning Kayue's face changed and she sneered. It seems like the fish is looking for an exit on its own. Ning Kayue instantly turned into a beam of light and left, while Yunxiao followed closely behind in the form of a thunderbolt, but he could not catch up. At this moment, the Joust for a Spouse event was still going on intensely in the center of the city. The sound of the city's defender array being bombarded reverberated, causing everyone to be shocked and look up at the sky. Jiang Churen's eyes were cold as she stared at the halo. Ruan Hongyu stood up slowly and smiled at the bewildered crowd. Don't worry about the competition. Those who are not afraid of death will die soon if they barge into the Red Moon City. So it turns out that someone broke into the city. Truly a fool looking for death. I've lived for so many years, but I've never heard of anyone trespassing in the Red Moon City. Sigh, people these days think that they are invincible just because they have some ability. What kind of place do they think Red Moon City is? Everyone had a look of ridicule and disdain on their faces, waiting to see those unlucky bastards get crushed. The competition was still going on. Everyone had recovered from their shock and no longer paid attention to the fluctuations in the sky. Jiang Churen and Ruan Hongyu looked at each other and saw the worry in each other's eyes. The appearance of the 9-colored halo meant that the defender array had been suppressed to the extreme. The attacker was definitely a master. However, it was impossible for them to leave in this situation, but they felt a little relieved when they noticed that several extremely powerful forces were heading toward the scene of the incident. The other higher-ups of the Red Moon City naturally understood the meaning of the halo. They were also worried, but most of them had cold expressions. No matter who it was, anyone who dared to break into the Red Moon City would die. On the stage, a man spat out a mouthful of blood. His eyes were full of panic as he said hurriedly, "Stop. I admit defeat." The other man immediately stopped and stood with his hands behind his back. He smiled and said, "Thanks for letting me win. Lu Yuxing won this round. Is there anyone else who wants to fight?" Jiang Bieli, the host, said. "Thank you for showing mercy, Brother Yuxing," the man who lost forced a smile and said. He walked down from the stage in a carefree manner. He was neither upset nor angry. Many people knew that their chances were slim. They wanted to try it out and also to compare notes with others to prove their martial arts. Lu Yuxing nodded slightly and looked towards a certain spot below the ring, smiling. "Brother Zimao, are you still waiting? If you still don't come out, Lady Ruobing will be mine." Humph. Ruan Zimao snorted lightly. Lu Yuxing's strength could be considered to be at the top among the younger generation. If he hadn't personally taken action, there would already be no one who could defeat him. He peeked at Zhu Xuanqi beside him and chuckled, "Brother Xuanqi, don't you want to go up and test your skills? I think Brother Zimao is stronger than Brother Yuxing. It'll be more interesting to have an exchange with Brother Zimao later," Zhu Xuanqi said indifferently. The two of them chatted happily like old friends, but the fighting spirit in their eyes was getting stronger and stronger. At their level, although they were mainly sparring, they were only one step away from winning the championship. It was not something impossible, so every step they took was unusually cautious. Since that's the case, then I'll show my incompetence first. Ruan Zimao's eyes darkened, and he leaped forward. Zhu Xuanqi would be his biggest opponent this time, and Lu Yuxing in front of him was not to be underestimated either. "Do you want to rest?" Jiang Bieli asked Lu Yuxing. In order to highlight the fairness of the competition, the party who stayed in the ring could propose the condition of rest. Lu Yuxing chuckled. "Of course. Even though it didn't use much essence force, the opponent is Brother Zimao. We have to face him at 120%. Ruan Zimao snorted coldly and stood with his hands behind his back, waiting quietly. The spectators were all in high spirits. After more than 10 rounds of elimination, it was finally time for the battle between the martial supremes. Everyone's eyes shone with excitement. On the other hand, Jiang Churen's eyes were dull and lifeless, as if he was completely unconcerned. Ruan Hongyu poked him with her finger and said angrily, "Zimao is going on stage. Who do you think will win in the end?" Jiang Churan came back to his senses and smiled. It's hard to say. Zimao's chances of winning weren't small, but Zhu Xuanqi didn't seem simple either. Before the competition is over, no one can be certain of the result. From what you're saying, it seems like it's going to be difficult for Zimao to win. I don't think you're in the mood for the competition, Ruan Hongyu said unhappily. Are you thinking about the 9-colored halo? Jiang Churan nodded slightly and said seriously, I didn't sense any Peerless expert making a move. That 9-colored halo might have been created by some other means, but Kayua has already passed, so she should be fine. It's just that we're in the middle of an eventful period, and Ruabing is still running around as she pleases. It seems like we've been too lax in our control of her. Ruan Hongyu laughed. It's too late to do anything now. She's about to get married. She's going to ruin her in-laws. Jiang Churan shook his head with a bitter smile. He looked over, trying to see through the layers of light and see the mystery behind it. In the depths of the halo, rays of golden light spun non-stop, blasting away the 9-colored light. A hole was forcibly opened in the entire defender array, opening up a passage to the outside. Success? It's connected to the formation outside the city. Li's face revealed a trace of joy. Lord Sheng, let's go. The void flickered slightly, and 4 figures appeared. They were Shang, Tang Jia, Li Yi, and Jiang Ruabing. Jiang Ruabing's face was full of excitement as she said happily. I can finally leave. Let's hurry up and leave. The other end of this formation is 100,000 miles away, which is equivalent to a small-scale teleportation formation, Li said with a smile. As long as we're teleported in, we'll be safe unless the other party has a 9-stars martial emperor expert chasing us. Before Shang entered the city to save the people, he had set up a formation 100,000 miles away just in case. He did not expect it to come in handy. Shang nodded. Just as he was about to enter the tunnel, his expression changed and he shouted, not good. Hurry up and run. He suddenly struck out with both palms, forming a force that could topple mountains and overturn the seas. He pushed the 4 of them into the passage, and took a step out himself. Half of his body had entered the passage, but he suddenly froze. You think you can escape just because there's a space tunnel? What do you think my Red Moon City is? Ning Kayue's cold voice sounded. Song of Ages appeared in her hand. She threw it forward and it flew into the tunnel. At the same time, she kicked Shang into the tunnel. Shang's heart was filled with fear. As soon as he entered the tunnel, he realized that something was wrong. The entire dark tunnel began to collapse under the golden scepter. The figures of the 5 people appeared in the heavenly martial realm and fell from the sky. Everyone's faces were filled with shock. Not only was the passageway destroyed, but they also discovered to their shock that there were 3 more people beside them. They were the 8 guardians of death. Senior Jianan, Xiaoba said with a bitter smile. Your art of concealment is unparalleled in the world. You've been discovered as well. Jianan was exasperated and shouted, what do you mean we've been discovered? It's all because of this group of demons. When the people of Red Moon City caught up to us, they destroyed the tunnel and implicated us. Bastard. Tang Jia was furious. You guys took advantage of us and now you blame us for being a burden? I'll kill you bastards. He wanted to leap up and fly over to kill, but he felt weak all over. The 7 of them were restrained by a force and fell to the ground. Song of Time also fell with them. With a clang, it stabbed into the ground and gave off a golden light. The 7 people were all fixed in place, unable to move. It's over. It's over. It's my master's scepter. Jiang Ruabing exclaimed. You're not finished, we're finished. Xiaoba replied. When your master comes, you'll only be reprimanded a few times, but we'll lose our lives. Mr. Shang, what do we do now? Jiang Ruabing asked anxiously. My master is about to catch up. Shang's expression was also unusually grave. The master that Jiang Ruabing had mentioned was naturally the woman who had stopped his figure and kicked him into the passage. That power was definitely a 9 stars martial sovereign. He said in a serious voice, this place should be outside of Red Moon City. We don't know how far it is. We can leave as long as we work together to break through the power of this profound level weapon. Otherwise, we will be finished when they arrive. How do we break it? Jian Nan cursed angrily. All the elemental energy in my body has been frozen. This damn scepter. His eyes suddenly lit up and he said hurriedly, Mr. Sheng, don't you have a powerful ball? Quickly take it out and break this scepter. How are we supposed to retrieve the armillary sphere when all the elemental energy in our body is frozen? Sheng said coldly. I can't even transform into a demon now. Then what should we do? Jian Nan said dejectedly. Sit and wait for death? No, no. Jiang Ruobing hurriedly said. Don't just sit here and wait for death. Everyone can use the strength of their bodies to move bit by bit. The further away you are from this scepter, the less you will be affected. At that time, you can take out your profound level weapon and break this thing. Good. Go all out. Everyone had a strong desire to live. They gritted their teeth and started to move away from the scepter. Jiang Ruobing was cheering on the side. In the sky above the Red Moon City, Ning Qiuat closed her eyes and calculated. She snorted softly. 3,000 miles north of the city. At this moment, Ning Hangfeng and the others had also gathered because of the halo phenomenon. After hearing the order, they immediately led the masters to the north of the city. Ning Qiuat said, let's go and have a look. Ruobing is too insensible. I have to teach her a lesson this time. Shi and Yunxiao also turned into beams of light and headed toward the north of the city. Everyone's speed was extremely fast, and they soon found where the group was. They were all desperately trying to move away. Ning Hangfeng snorted coldly. More than 10 people immediately landed and surrounded the 9 people, each of them sneering. Shang and the others paled, knowing that they would not be spared. Miss Ruobing, Ning Hangfeng said, you're too insensible. You've caused such a big commotion. If you still acknowledge me as the second young lady, help me pull out this scepter immediately and bring your men back. Jiang Ruobing said hurriedly. Impudent. The air twisted slightly, and Ning Qiuat and Yunxiao walked out together. Ning Qiuat's face was cold as she glared at Jiang Ruobing. Jiang Ruobing trembled in fear. It was difficult for her to move her body, but she was so frightened that she took a step back and bumped into Li. Li stared at her, panting. Her eyes flickered. Jiang Ruobing looked into her eyes and suddenly felt a little scared. Sister Li, everyone's trying to squeeze out. Why are you squeezing toward me? I can't escape, so I can only let you down, sister, Li laughed bitterly. She raised her hand gently and clutched Jiang Ruobing's neck. Her cold nails scratched Jiang Ruobing's neck as she said indifferently, my lords of the Red Moon City, we have no enmity between us. The only thing that we have is the 8 signs of death. I hope that everyone can live in harmony. You coward. You actually took me as a hostage. Jiang Ruobing shouted in anger. To think that I treated you like an older sister. Li smiled bitterly. I'm sorry, sister. I'll make it up to you next time if I have the chance. I'm dead, but Master Sheng can't. That's why I'm the one who's holding you hostage. Jian Nan smacked his forehead and said in frustration, what a smart demonic beast. Why didn't we think of that? He was frustrated. Holding Jiang Ruobing hostage might be his only chance. The people of Red Moon City were all shocked and angry, not knowing what to do. Li Yunxiao sneered, we have no grudges against each other, but you've held the second miss of Red Moon City hostage. That's already a deep hatred. I'm forced by the circumstances, and I don't want either, Li replied calmly. If you were in my place, you would have done the same. She made a mistake, Ning Qiuat said coldly. She deserves it. Kill her if you can. Stop it. Li's pupils shrank and she shouted. By the time she finished speaking, her 5 fingernails had already dug into her throat. Bright red blood flowed down and dyed her white top red, making her look even more shocking. Ning Qiuat's face darkened. She had wanted to intimidate Li with her words and then kill him. She didn't expect that he would see through her. This female demon was not simple. The situation forced us to do this. Li said sternly. If you insist on perishing together, I have nothing to say. Her 5 fingers went even deeper into the wound. Jiang Ruobing's face turned pale. If she used a little more force, her entire head would be cut off. Then, there would be nothing she could do to save the situation.